Chapter 7. In the canned air depths of Milcom HQ, in the long hall with invisible doors, two men walked, Orona and Stevens. "He's as nuts as an orchard full of filbert trees," Stevens said. "If we hadn't needed to keep him on a leash, we'd have psych-DC'd him years ago." "True," Orona said. "But he's what we've got, and Jen's staff wants him along. You know how politics works." "Yeah, Jen's staff thinks he's some kind of monster killer, but I think he's a goddamn crew killer." "You wanted a field command. I got you one." "Right. Carrying Jonah the Jinx into a potentially lethal forced combat sit." "Let me put it to you like this, Bill," Orona said. "Jen's staff will have an experienced person on board this project. The only other Marine we know about who has met these things face to face and survived the initial encounter disappeared. The woman and the kid he saved also vanished, and we don't know where they are. The girl Wilkes saved is in the bug house, doped to the gills. There was also a badly damaged android, but we don't have a clue as to what happened to it. We're full of mystery here. That leaves Wilkes." "I don't like it. He's unstable." "I'm not asking you to like it, or like him. I'm telling you that Jen's staff says this is how it's going to be. If you're tired of being a Marine, then you call up Jen's staff and tell them you don't like it." Stevens shook his head. "He's been bumped to sergeant and put in charge of loading supplies," Orona continued. "How much damage can he do there?" Colonel Stevens stood in the loading dock of the carrier watching the robots haul gear into the ship. He stopped a private heading for the hydraulic walkers. "What's in those crates, Marine?" The man snapped to attention. "Sir, plasma rifles and chargers." Stevens stared at the hard black plastic boxes. "Who in the hell authorized plasma weapons?" "Sir, I don't know, sir. Sergeant Wilkes ordered us to load them, sir. That's all I know, sir." "As you were." Stevens took the lift to Carg Op. He saw Wilkes directing a trio of cargo bots. "Wilkes!" "Sir?" "Where did you get the authorization to requisition plasma weapons?" "I was ordered to supply the ground troops with appropriate weaponry, sir." "And you thought blasters were appropriate?" "We aren't going to war here, Sergeant. We are supposed to collect specimens, not pieces." "My experience," Wilkes began, "has distorted your mind," Stevens finished. "You've taken it upon yourself to provide grossly destructive weaponry when standard-issue carbines will do. That's what you used, wasn't it? And according to your own testimony, a 10mm AP would stop one of these things just fine." Rage flared in Wilkes. "First time you face off with these things, you'll wish you had something better, sir." "Jen's staff wants you along, Wilkes. So you're along. But I won't jeopardize my mission by splattering potential specimens all over the countryside with weaponry designed to stop tanks. Have those blasters removed from the ship, mister. Is that clear?" Wilkes' voice was ice and steel. "Perfectly clear, Colonel." The two electroball players darted back and forth inside the hexagonal, walled court, smashing the ball with charged paddles. The fist-sized orb rocketed into multi-cushioned patterns. 3 walls were the minimum allowed for a valid point, and came back at the players at over 120 kilometers an hour. The player on the left executed a perfect 6-wall attack. The player on the right was a half-second slow in his response, and the electroball smashed into his chest hard enough to knock him from his feet. "Gotcha!" The hit player came to his feet. "Your point." "Ready? Go ahead. Serve." The player on the right smiled. "In a moment. Any news of the merger proposal with Climate Systems?" Lefty shrugged. "I thought I told you. Our Op Massey convinced them to go for it." The player on the right laughed. "Made them an offer they couldn't refuse, eh?" "Well, you don't know Massey, but yeah, something like that. Serve." The two men sat hunched over a holographic table, fingers on the glove pad controls of the electroball game. Inside a clear hexagonal field, the miniature players sweated as they darted back and forth, while their operators wore custom and expensive silk business suits and looked considerably fresher. They were well-groomed, with 90-credit hairstyles and precious gem collar studs. They looked very much like corporation vice presidents, which they were. The tiny ball rocketed off 4 walls and went past the receiving player. "Good shot," the man in the vivid green silk said. He wore a ruby the size of his thumb tip at his throat, the red contrasting nicely with the green. "Yep, almost gave me a decent match," the one in the red silk said. His ornamental throat stud was of diamond, twice the size of his companion's ruby, and it glittered against the red. He was the senior VP of the two. The hologram shimmered and vanished. Green Silk said, "Listen, we need to talk about the biowarfare project." Red nodded. "Anything from the government?" The two of them stood and moved away from the table. Green said, "Nah, you know how these guys get when they want to keep things secret." "We need to be in on this," Red said. "We're talking about major credits here. We've had offers from every mill supply corporation in the system if we can come up with the right product. We can't let the military get the jump on us here." Green smiled. "Don't worry. I'm going to put Massey on it." They reached a door. It thwipped open to admit them to an office the size of a small home. One wall was air glass, giving a view of the megapolis. On a clear day like today, the view was spectacular from 80 stories high. Rank certainly had its privileges. "Okay, we've been hearing about this guy Massey, but I don't know him. Tell me." Red moved to a desk big enough to seat 5 people without crowding. Green went to a dispenser set into the wall across from the desk. "Devil dust," he said into the dispenser. "half a gram. You want anything?" "Yeah, get me an orgy inhaler." Green added Red's order to his own. After a second, a small tray extruded itself from the machine. On the tray were a small mound of pink powder inside a hemispherical cup set next to a one-shot nasal tube. Green tossed the tube to Red and picked up the cup. He pressed the dust against his left eye as Red fired the compressed gas charge of the inhaler into his right nostril. Both men grinned as the chemicals took hold. "You were saying about Massey?" "Oh, yeah. Him. Well, this guy is something else. MBA from New Harvard. Doctorate in Corp Law from Cornell. Postdoc work at Mitsubishi U. Could have had his pick of any company in the system, but he enlisted in the Colonial Marines. Got a Silver Star in the Oil Wars. 4 Purple Hearts. Commanded a recon unit in the Tanzu Rebellion on Wakasashi's world. Picked up a few decorations there." "Real patriot, huh?" Red said. He squirmed in his chair as another chemically powered orgasm rippled through him. "Nah, he liked killing. Probably would have gone pretty high up, but they court-martialed him. Tried to kill his CO. No shit. Yeah. Thought the CO was a coward when he wouldn't order an attack on a bunch of civilians Massey thought might be hiding enemy sympathizers. Might be. Knocked the officer senseless and led the attack himself. Killed 85 men, women, and children. Word is more than half of them got dispatched by Massey personally. Man loved his job, eh? Oh, yeah. We bought the tribunal stuff off and put him to work for us. Good help is so hard to find, you know." Green laughed. Red joined him. Massey sat at the table in his kitchen, his 6-year-old son on his lap. Behind him, Marla punched the controls on the coffee maker. "Be ready in a sec, hun," Marla said. She moved up behind Massey and kissed his neck. Massey smiled. "Thanks, babe." To his son, he said, "So, what's my boy up to today?" "We're gonna go on a field trip to the zoo," the boy said. "See a Danabian slime spider, and maybe the Bartlett snakes, if they'll come out." "Sounds great," Massey said. He lifted the boy, put him on the floor. "But Daddy's got to go to work now. Say hello to the slime spider for me." "Oh, Daddy, slime spiders can't talk." Massey grinned. "No? What about your Uncle Chad?" Marla swatted at him with one hand. My brother is not a slime spider, she said, but she laughed. No, that's true, her husband said. He's only got 4 limbs, not 8. Go, you'll be late for work. Here's your coffee. Still smiling, Massey left. Yes, work. Nothing was more important than work. Nothing. Her teeth glittered like stars. They were so beautiful. Closer she came, magnificent in her huge glory, black and deadly and purposeful. Her exoskeleton gleamed darkly as she leaned down toward Billy. Her mouth opened, and the smaller set of teeth on the inner lips also opened. She was the queen. I love you, her thoughts came unspoken to Billy. I need you. Yes, Billy thought. She was the queen, and she reached for Billy, her clawed hands glistening. Come and join with me, the queen said. Yes, Billy thought. Yes, I will. Closer, the queen came. Easley and Bueller squatted behind the remains of the shattered building, a waist-level row of bricks and twisted rebar the only protection against the bunker's ROM gun. It couldn't see them, but the stoop comp running the gun could probably pick up some heat leakage from their combat suits, and every now and then it would pop off a couple dozen 30mm AP rounds in their direction. Shit, Bueller said. Fucker's got us pinned down. Maybe not, Easley offered. Thing's got service ports aft. I can launch a grenade in the right spot, it'll blow the power, then we got his ass. 3 rounds of 30mm clipped a couple of centimeters of brick off the top of the wall over Bueller's head. He squatted lower. Damn! Okay, look, Easley said. Here's the play. You scoot down about 20 meters, put your weapon over the wall, and spray that sucker. I'll circle around behind it and blow it offline while it's potting at you. Under the clear steel faceplate of his helmet cover, Bueller frowned. The expression wrinkled the skin tight that reached to his eyes, and the skull of the elite Colonial Marine WAC team embossed on the tight. Unless you got a better idea, Easley said. Bueller shook his head. What the hell? Let's do it. Give me a signal when you're ready to dance. Copy, Easley said. His voice was crisp in the helmet's bone phones. The comm was standard military tight beam and scrambled, so the geezer in the bunker couldn't hear them, or even if he could, he wouldn't be able to understand what they were saying. Bueller moved off, keeping low. Every so often, the range of motion gun would cap off a few more shots. Easley lit a low-heat flare and dropped it. With any luck, the gun would think it was a suit leak and zero in on it. While it was doing that, he would blow that sucker. He moved off. He was good. One of the Corps' best, and damned if he was going to get drilled by some geezer in a lockbox. When he got into position, Easley said, Do it! 30 meters away, crouched behind a big chunk of rubble that was probably once a house, Bueller whipped his carbine over the top and triggered it full auto. He waved it back and forth so the sensors would get it. The sonics would have found it pretty quick anyhow, but he didn't want to take any chances. Soft steel slugs spanged off the wall, chopping it away. It knew he was here, all right. Bueller pulled his weapon back so it wouldn't get hit. 5 seconds later, 2 things happened. A grenade went off, and the robotic gun stopped shooting. Bueller grinned. Yeah, way to go, buddy. Easley must have rammed one right up the thing's drain pipe. Hell of an enema. 10 seconds went past. Easley? You're buying the beer tonight, pal, came the reply. Bueller stood. Oh man, was this sweet. That old fart thought he could play with the best. A round splashed against Bueller's chest. Oh shit! He looked down, saw the splatter of phosphorescent green over his heart. If it had been armor-piercing, he'd be history. Shit, shit, shit! You got that right, Wilkes said. How do you do, Mr. Shit? He walked toward Bueller, a training sniper rifle dangling in one hand. Behind Wilkes, Easley stood, helmet cover already off, a similar splash of green running down the formerly clear faceplate. Backing Easley was a squad of Marines in field undress, watching. Wilkes wore a Sinlin coverall and formplast boots. You guys stink, he said. Sure, you sidestepped a few mines and avoided a couple of trip lines and you managed to take out a robot gun, but you're still dead meat because you moved stupid. Behind Wilkes, Easley leaned over to the trooper next to him. You getting this, Blake? The second Marine, a short blonde woman with her hair in a standard combat buzz, nodded. Yup. Real learning experience. He made you guys look like dung birds. Easley frowned. Hey, Bueller cut in. Wait a sec, Sarge. I heard Easley on the tight beam. No, you didn't. You heard me. But that's cheating, Wilkes finished. Life is hard. You think these things we're going up against are going to play by some kind of rules? Bueller stared at the splotch on his suit. So, boys and girls, in honor of this stirring work by Easley and Bueller, we're going to spend the day on the shooting course. Full battle gear, combat scenarios until you can get across without being splashed. Wilkes smiled at Bueller, then Easley. If a wasted old geezer like me can fan two of the CMC's supposedly best whack teams as easy as I did, the colonies are in a shitload of trouble if they ever need anything worse than a cut skin bonded. Saddle up, Marines. The squad moved off, grumbling. Bueller, you asshole. Damn, Easley, now look what you got us into. Buddha, you guys look like crap. Wilkes watched them go, pleased. Of course he had to rag their asses. That was a TO's job. And since Stevens had busted him out of loading the ship, this was what he could do. But despite his criticism, these guys were good. They'd been together a year. They were all rated high in small arms, explosives, standard strategy, and tactics. If he hadn't cheated, he wouldn't have gotten the two hot rods coming at him. They were a lot better than he'd expected. He'd go into enemy fire with this team anytime. As they pulled armor from the carryall and began to suit up, Wilkes remembered his squad on Rim. Were these guys as good as that unit had been? Probably. It was hard to say for sure until things went sour. Drill wasn't the same as real, no matter how you tried to make it so. This squad had better scores in training, and they moved real well when the return fire was nothing more than splashers. If they moved as well in the real world when the bad guys started coming, then, yeah, they would do better than the squad had on Rim. He hoped to all the gods that they moved better. It was one thing to come up against a nest of the aliens, another thing to be on a planet full of the damned things. And who knew but that their home world might have worse living on it? Maybe the aliens he'd fought were like mice compared to the worst on their planet. That was a sobering thought. If this team was going to go down and come back, they needed to be good. They needed to be the best. If he could teach them everything he remembered, if he could drill them until they could point-shoot a demi-credit out of the air, if he could teach them what they'd be up against. If was a big word, even though it didn't look it. There wasn't going to be any room for error in this mission. Screw-ups would get somebody dead. And not just dead. The old saying was wrong here. They could kill you, and then they could eat you. And they would do worse if they took you alive. The team began to amble back. Wilkes brought his thoughts away from what might be to what was. All right, children. Let's see if we can't cross the street without getting run down by a hovercab, shall we? Blake, you take point. Easley, you're TC. Bueller, HW Tactical. Ramirez. He finished ordering the squad, then started to give them the scenario. No, he decided. Let them figure it out on the fly. Instead of telling them what they would face, he said, "It'll take 45 seconds for the holocomp to prepare the new playing field. That's what you got, people. See if you can't look like Marines and not a bunch of turds on legs this time." Wilkes spoke into his comp control mic. Around them, the crumbled walls and bunker began to shimmer and dissolve as the computer pulled the plug on the last scenario. Wilkes turned and walked away as the obstacle course began to rebuild itself. It would look real, and within limits feel real, but it was an illusion. What they would be facing when the time came was no illusion. You could spit on that, Marine, and damn well make it shine.